It is waiver wire time. Are you buying Marquise Brown? Are you intrigued by Harold Fannin Jr. and Quentin Johnston? We're going to help you sort it out right now on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. I'm going to go through each position and later in the show take your questions. Welcome, everybody. I am Adam Aizer, and I'm going to tell Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg something. Guys, this is a little helpful tip from me. I did my waivers for my, 11 CBS leagues. Took a while. I would set aside a nice chunk of time, get in a quiet room, tell your family you're busy. A lot of good names on waivers this week. You may not agree, but it took me a while. I think it's going to take you a while as well.
Yeah, it takes a while every Tuesday. We've been doing it for 20 plus years. Thanks for the tip.
That's why you got to split them up between Tuesday and Wednesday. Makes it a lot easier.
Hashtag Aizer Fantasy Tips.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about Aizer Fantasy Tips. But you know what? Some weeks are easier than others. But I think there are some. I think the word intriguing is the right word. I can't guarantee they're going to be good or anything like that, but very intriguing players. So
we'll see how many times on this show we use the word intriguing to describe the players that are on the waiver wire.
Well, I'm going to run that meter up, I'll tell you right now. All right, first question for you guys before we get into quarterbacks. Last year, Baker Mayfield was a waiver wire pickup, and he was a league winner. If there is a Baker Mayfield type of player, doesn't have to be a quarterback, who could win you your league off the waiver wire week 1, who is it? Week 2, who is it?
I think of the guys that we're looking at in the range that we talk about, it's probably Michael Penix, just with the hope that what we saw after the way he finished the last 3 games last year, where his offense was averaging 30 points per game, had over 20 fantasy points in week 1, did that without Darnell Mooney, hopefully gets Mooney back. Maybe we unlock Kyle Pitts and Drake London continues to build off what he did, uses Bijan Robinson as a pass catcher. Like, there's the potential for him to be that guy. But I think if we're talking about guys that just come basically out of nowhere, because that's where I guess Baker came last year, maybe is Daniel Jones. Maybe.
Wow.
That would be intriguing.
That would be intriguing, and I like where your head's at with Penix. All right, so I'll give an answer that's not a quarterback, but I want to give a Brown. Can I say Quinshon Judkins, who's already way too rostered in CBS leagues, but he's like out there in half of ESPN and Yahoo leagues. That's somebody who could absolutely be a league winner that you can go and pick up off the waiver wire. If that answer doesn't count, I have another name.
Yeah, good, because that one doesn't count. Let's get a slightly more intriguing one. And that's 3 intriguing since we started counting.
Well, that's the first one that we've talked about a player. You tell me if Harold Fannin is intriguing, but the state of the tight end position, there's a lot of names, not necessarily a lot of guys that have high upside. We saw a lot of good things about Harold Fannin in week number 1. Did a lot of the stuff that David Njoku did last year, and then some. If he can build on that, he could be a decent volume earner in Cleveland. Joe Flacco's the quarterback. We talked about what the expectations are for the number of pass attempts that Joe Flacco would get from week to week. Maybe Harold Fannin ends up being a tight end that we feel really good about starting in 2 or 3 weeks, and then you just use him as a must-start fantasy tight end the rest of the way.
Oh boy, Dave, do I have a stat for you.
Oh, good.
Because Harold Fannin, it was a nice debut. 13.6 PPR fantasy points, 7 catches, 63 yards on 9 targets. His target per route run rate was exceptional. It was 29%. So I looked at the last 10 years, and I looked at rookies in their week 1 game. Okay, week 1 rookies. Minimum of 20 routes run. Who has had the highest target per route run rate? Number 1 in the last decade.
Is it Harold Fannin?
Warren. It was Tyler Warren, 37.5%.
Another
Number
good tight end.
2, Tyler Warren. Harold Fannin. Number 2, Harold Fannin.
Tyler Warren was so good, he was first and second on those. Brock Bowers wasn't up there, huh? That's curious.
Oh, he was. But just think about this list. Warren 1, Fannin 2, Pitts, 1,000-yard season. He was 3.
Okay.
Brock Bowers, 4. Will Dissly, who ran exactly 20 routes, 5. TJ Hawkinson, 6. Sam Laporta, 7. George Kittle, 8. Harold Fannin is number 2 on that list. It's very, very intriguing, ladies and gentlemen. Harold Fannin Jr., he's widely available, too. All right, next question. Give me your top 3 waiver wire priorities, just no position specifics here. In general, Jamey, top 3.
Marquise Brown is number 1 with the injury/suspension that the Chiefs are dealing with. No Xavier Worthy, at least we expect for week 2, and no Rashee Rice for the next 5 games. I think Brown, coming off a 16-target game against the Chargers, has an opportunity to build off that, and we'll see how he could sustain it, because we thought there might be an opportunity for him last year to have a role. Maybe this is just something that, springboards him for the rest of the season, getting this chance to, build that rapport with Patrick Mahomes. Then the next two guys would be both Chargers receivers, Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. I think they both showed enough in week one that hopefully Justin Herbert will throw enough to support not just those two guys, but also Ladd McConkey. But it was very impressive to see Keenan Allen just step right back in, have the solid rapport with Justin Herbert once again. And then Quentin Johnston, I think a lot of people forget, he finished last season very strong from a fantasy perspective. That carries over to week one, despite what seemingly was, let's get Quentin Johnston out of there. We draft Trey Harris, we draft Lambert Smith, we bring in Mike Williams, then we bring in Keenan Allen. Just felt like they were trying to replace Quentin Johnston all along. Maybe they just like the kid and are going to give him an opportunity to flourish in his third year.
I love the first name. I like the second name. I think I'd put Fannin ahead of Quentin Johnston, though, just because I know how flighty Quentin Johnston has been over his career. Plus, I don't know how many games, Adam, we're going to see the Chargers, or Justin Herbert, rather, support 3 wide receivers to have good fantasy numbers.
All right, you guys didn't say any quarterbacks, so let's get into that position right now for the Week 2 waiver wire. Here are our priorities, and these guys are available in 65% of leagues. Well, they're rostered in 65% of leagues or less. So you're not going to see J.J. McCarthy, who, by the way, I did go through my 11 CBS leagues, and even in some 12-team leagues, there were a few where J.J. McCarthy was available, and he was a big priority for me. He'll slip through the cracks in a few leagues, but these guys are much more available. Aaron Rodgers, Michael Penix, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Jackson Dart. With Dart aside, Jamey, when you look at these 4 names, are these week 2 picks? Are they rest of season picks? Is it a combination? How did you sort this list?
It's a combination of both, and just got news, by the way, that George Kittle has been placed on injured reserve, so he's going to miss the next 4 games. Not fun, but good for your fantasy lineups in the case that you can at least not have to worry about rostering him there. You can put him on an IR spot.
If you've got the IR spot.
If you've got an IR spot. I think they're more long-term situations, but you also have to factor in what could happen in week 2. So in the case of Rodgers versus Penix, if just in a vacuum, I'd rather have Penix for the potential. If I need a starter for week 2, I'd rather have Rodgers just because Penix may not have Drake London or Darnell Mooney. We're waiting to find out probably Wednesday what the injury report will tell us on London, and hopefully Mooney can return. But I got to be impressed with what Rodgers did. Coming off the 4-touchdown game, looking like he's got complete control of this offense, going to work well with Arthur Smith. And he did this really with minimal impact from DK Metcalf. He losed almost everybody else on the roster. Touchdown to Jonnu Smith, touchdown to Skoronix, touchdown to Calvin Austin. All these other guys just stepping up. And once DK Metcalf gets going, I think it can be really good for Rodgers. So I like the setup for him, but also Penix long term. I think just the way that he showed command of this offense, again, building off what he did last year, it's going to be really fun to watch Penix operate because I think we're going to get a lot of shootouts for that Falcons team.
Dave, you look at that list, and it's Rodgers, Penix, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Jackson Dart. How many of those guys do you anticipate putting in a claim for when you do your waivers?
In my 1 quarterback leagues, very few of them. And it's really only the teams where I've got a low-end quarterback. A low-end quarterback meaning a guy that I drafted round 8 or later, didn't draft a backup quarterback because I knew I could find somebody off the waiver wire in case I needed one. But I still might rather have that roster spot go toward a player at a different position rather than Penix or Aaron Rodgers. There's a lot of people that love to carry that second quarterback. And they say they do it because you never know when the starter in front's going to get hurt. But if all the guys on the waiver wire all sort of look the same and there isn't one guy that you look at and go, yeah, that's the one I want the rest of the season, then you don't have to dedicate that roster spot to the backup quarterback. So I don't know how many of those quarterbacks I'm going to put in a waiver claim for, but I do agree that rest of season, Penix is the one that I would go for.
And just keep in mind, we got a Brock Purdy injury to monitor here, and he's a borderline starter in a lot of leagues. So you might be looking at it just, okay, I'm going to stash Purdy and maybe find somebody to get me through week 2, or whoever your number 2 quarterback was, you're dropping that quarterback to pick up one of these guys.
I'm a big Purdy fan, but with Kittle going on IR now, I knew he was hurt when I did this, but I put in a claim to drop Brock Purdy. I don't remember who it was for. I think it was for a different position. But I think, obviously, as you said, he's borderline. I didn't put in a claim for any of these quarterbacks personally, but not that I disagree with the list, but just it's not a position of need for most managers, I think. But would you drop Trevor Lawrence for Rodgers, Penix, Daniel Jones, or Geno Smith?
Not this week. I want to see what this looks like with him taking on the Bengals. I think we're going to get a hopeful shootout because both offenses, for the most part, underwhelmed. I think a lot of people thought clearly the Bengals, based on their firepower, would do a lot better against the Browns, even in a tough matchup. And then I think a lot of people looked at the Jaguars. And you brought this up on our podcast, Adam. I wonder how much the delay sort of factored into how that game unfolded, because they had the game somewhat in hand, at least from a momentum standpoint, and just the way the game flow was going. Let Bryce Young maybe make some mistakes or have to go beat us, as opposed to let's go out there and try to throw the ball all over the place. I think we're going to see a more run-based Jaguars offense than maybe we expected, especially the way Travis Etienne looked. But if they get behind against the Bengals, we could see some fireworks, and it is the most projected point total of the week, highest projected point total of the week. So hopefully a lot of points there from Trevor Lawrence. So I would hold on to Lawrence compared to these guys, even though a lot of them look better than Lawrence in week 1.
All right, Dave, I'll finish with this. How about C.J. Stroud? Did you cut C.J. Stroud loose for any of these guys?
I would cut C.J. Stroud loose because it's the same issues that he had last year, especially when it comes to the offensive line. And the fact that he couldn't get the ball more often than Nico Collins was a real problem. So I think C.J. Stroud is someone we could all move on from.
Okay. We get Tampa Bay on Monday night. Does Houston. We're going to take a break, and we'll talk about the running backs and get into the Browns running backs. That's going to be, I'd say, one of the more intriguing backfields to follow over the next few weeks. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Well, you may not be able to find a week 2 starter at running back on the waiver wire this week, but still some good options, some very good handcuffs, and I think the Browns backfield is the one that really stands out. Dave, at the top of the show, you talked about Quinshon Judkins, who is not available in CBS Sports leagues, but in Yahoo and ESPN leagues, he's less than 60% rostered. So if he were available in a league, how does he compare to Marquise Brown, who we said was the #1 waiver wire ad? And then what does this mean for Dylan Sampson? Let's talk about the Browns running backs here.
Okay, so if you need a running back and you're thinking long-term, Judkins goes ahead of Hollywood Brown for me. In fact, just in a vacuum, I'd rather have Judkins than Brown, because we know that Hollywood Brown, once Rashee Rice comes back, once Xavier Worthy comes back, that target volume that we're counting on, it's not going to be there for Hollywood Brown. So Judkins, if you're debating those two, he would be the one that I would go after. I just wouldn't expect anything big from him for at least 2 more games, if not 3 or 4 more games, because we talked about this on our podcast today. He didn't participate in training camp with the Browns, may not have a real good idea of what's expected of him or what the playbook is to him. And so it's going to take him a while to ramp up. But by the time you get to mid-October, he could be a #2 fantasy running back, no questions asked.
So why don't we just take a look at the top priorities at the running back position, because his teammate, Dylan Sampson, kind of stands out here. Trey Benson, you're probably not going to get great production from him unless there's a James Conner injury, but that does happen every year. So, Jamey, how much farther ahead of the pack, is Dylan Sampson compared to the rest of the guys on the list?
He's pretty far. I mean, you talked about this. Like, we don't know when Judkins is going to make his debut. There's still no guarantee he's playing in week #2. And Sampson, I thought, did some nice things for the Browns. Obviously, Jerome Ford did not. So when you're just looking at it, if Judkins does play, I think the plan all along was to sort of have Judkins and Sampson be the duo that they were going to lean on, maybe with Ford sprinkled in some capacity. Now, the worst thing would be is if Raheem Sanders still has a role and he's taking those goal line opportunities, and then it's maybe 3 guys still taking touches away from each other, Sanders getting the goal line opportunity against the Bengals in week 1. But I'm hopeful that Sampson's going to be used on passing downs, whether it's first and second down when they're throwing or obvious third down situations. I think his skill set makes up for that more so than what Judkins can do. Ford could obviously play in that role as well. So I'm confident that what Sampson showed in his NFL debut for a young player, we had some questions about, just coming off that system in Tennessee where, Jalen Wright, for example, 2 years ago looked fantastic and then couldn't do anything in the NFL, but Sampson, looked like he could be a playmaker. Can he get those tough yards? Is he going to be used in short yard situations? Can he be a first, second down runner? Those are questions I think still have to be answered, but I think just the way that he was used in the passing game and the fact that they're going to throw the ball as much as they are, 41 pass attempts on average for Joe Flacco, going back to his time in 2023, like Sampson could have a really good role in PPR.
I think it's worth talking about the Browns offense in general. What do you guys think this looks like going forward? Obviously, it's a bit of a house of cards. If Flacco loses the job, it could be really bad for everyone. Mm-hmm. But, they run a lot of plays, they throw a lot of passes, and they've got so many fantasy options here, including 3 of them that are going to be featured prominently on the waiver wire this week. Sort it out for me, Dave.
So I think it's interesting that against a defense that we didn't view coming into the year as a very good defense, but one that still had a great pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson, talking about the Bengals, they still tried to get the ball out of Joe Flacco's hands quickly. And that's why Dylan Sampson had the targets that he had and the catches that he had. Instead of handing off to him, they were getting him in a little bit of space. Flacco was getting rid of the ball quickly, and Sampson was trying to make a play after the catch. And a lot of people did that in this offense. Njoku for 6 targets. Harold Fannin, who we'll talk about later, had a bunch of targets. But Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy had a bunch of downfield targets. So when Flacco did have time or moved out of the pocket, he did throw downfield. There were a couple of awkward interceptions. I don't think you can really put that on Flacco. But it tells me that when they're against a defense that can't quite get to Flacco every single time, they will take some shots downfield. I think it's going to be a different type of matchup against Baltimore. That's a defense that's going to get after Joe Flacco. They've got a really good secondary. I would imagine Flacco is going to get the ball out fast, just like he did in week 1, without as many downfield shots. That could be good for Dylan Sampson. That could be good for Harold Fannin and David Njoku. Maybe not quite as good for Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman.
The Browns led the NFL in plays in 2023 and 2024. And in week 1, they were 3rd. So that's the only way this is going to work, is they just have to run a ton of plays, and they do that. Jamey, back to the running back list here. Trey Benson, Kenneth Gainwell, DJ Giddens, Kendre Miller, Kareem Hunt. Thoughts on these guys?
You're looking at handcuffs, and guys that may have an opportunity if somebody goes down to be, top 20-ish caliber running backs. You hate to see Jonathan Taylor miss time, but it looks like Giddens will be the backup there. Kendre Miller seems like he's going to have a role and be the backup to Alvin Kamara. I think the one that's the most intriguing, again, is Gainwell, because you're looking at a situation right now where they're going to use 3 running backs in some capacity. It's a matter of how much will Caleb Johnson get worked in, especially in a competitive game, or if they're trailing, because it doesn't look like they're going to trust him at all in passing down situations. Now, Gainwell has 3 catches in that game against the Jets, does get an opportunity for a minimal amount of carries. I would love to see more work go to Jaylen Warren, but they seem to trust Kenneth Gainwell a lot, one of the better pass blocking running backs in the league. And when you have a 41-year-old quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, that's going to matter. So I think Gainwell is not somebody that you should just overlook. Clearly not somebody that you're starting in any 10 or 12-team leagues at this point, but maybe 14-team leagues, 16-team leagues. He may work in as a flex option in PPR, especially if you can get that to 3 to 5 catch range on a consistent basis.
Played 52% of the snaps. That led the Steelers. 9 of 10 on 3rd downs, talking about him as a pass protector. So that makes sense for Gainwell. Do you guys remember Amari DiMercato in Arizona, who was playing a lot of 3rd downs last year? It seems like Benson's taking over that role. And he played about 1/3 of the snaps for the Cardinals. He didn't play anywhere near the goal line. That's the good news for James Conner, but the bad news is that Benson will play in that DiMercato role. And then Giddens, just to further the point on this, Jonathan Taylor, first 3 quarters of the game, 91% of the snaps. So Giddens, a true handcuff and a true backup for Indianapolis.
You dropping Caleb Johnson?
I don't want to. If he's my worst bench player, then I guess I would. Like if I could get Quinshon Judkins for him, of course.
I would drop him for Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, if you need a guy for this week and he's your worst bench player.
Even long term. I mean, I still think Sampson's role is going to be just playing time. They may end up playing him out the same amount of snaps. And if you're talking about PPR, I trust Dylan Sampson at this point way more than Caleb Johnson, because I don't think Johnson's going to catch a pass at this point based on how those other 2 guys are playing.
Yeah, I did. I liked Caleb Johnson, but I had to drop. I don't know if they're going to go through, but I did put in a few claims to drop him in some leagues. There's not going to be a lot. I don't think anyone's going to pick him up.
Right. So you could always go and get him later on. It's easier to say and do in the smaller leagues, the 8-team leagues, the 10-team leagues. But I have a feeling at some point this year, Caleb Johnson will matter.
All right. So wide receiver is going to be more intriguing than running back this week. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the wide receivers you need to add after this on Fantasy Football Today. We are back on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, and I am going to try to win $100 right now. Jamey said during the break he'd give that to me if I could guess the receiver that the Chiefs signed.
There is no way you get this without cheating. No way.
How long do I have? Do I have like the whole segment?
You have until the end of your life. You will never get this right.
Okay, so it's not Amari Cooper. Oh, man. Victor Cruz. I'll give you my bet.
You have a better chance of naming former Giants from 2025 until the day you were born than you do of getting this name.
Did you know who this person was?
No. Neither will you.
Really?
Yes.
Who is it? Who is it?
Nope. Well, we'll save it to the end of the show.
Okay, yeah. Don't pick him up. But there are other Chiefs receivers that you could be looking at, including Hollywood Brown. He is number 1 on the waiver wire priority list at wide receiver. So how much fab for Marquise Brown? How much for Keenan Allen? How much for Quentin Johnston? And maybe a couple others. Jamey.
I don't think you want to go crazy. Dave sort of laid it out for you. Like there's a chance that Marquise Brown could be relevant all season long, but most likely worthy given the day-to-day designation from Andy Reid, and we know that there's only 5 more games for the suspension of Rashee Rice. So at some point he's going to return and take over, we assume at least, as the number 1 receiver there. I do think, though, that Brown was expected to have a prominent role last year at the shoulder injury. Comes in, clearly takes over in week 1 when Worthy goes down. We have no idea what the target share would have been if Worthy was healthy, so he still may have gotten a pretty significant amount of targets from Patrick Mahomes. So just keep that in mind. But at least in the short term, he could be a league-winning option for you. So if you're stuck at wide receiver, or you're in, these leagues where you don't have to play a tight end, maybe Kittle was somebody you were counting on in a wide receiver flex spot, wide receiver tight end flex spot, and you may just need a starter, then Brown's going to probably be worth a little bit more. But for me, it's going to be right around 15% max. So if you haven't spent any of your $100 budget yet, I think $15 is appropriate. Maybe you want to stretch that to 20, but I wouldn't go crazy with it. I just think there's not that long of a window. But that being said, if Worthy's out for 5 more games and Rice is not there for 5 more games, you're looking at 10-plus targets potentially on a week-to-week basis for Patrick Mahomes. That's hard to overlook.
Dave, if Marquise Brown is worth 15% of your budget, how much are the Chargers guys worth?
I would say Keenan Allen would come in pretty close to that because I would expect Keenan Allen to have staying power for the rest of the season and maybe not 10 targets per game, but pretty close. He could be in that 7 to 8 target per game range, and you're definitely going to start somebody like that on the bye weeks when they come around. When you have injuries at wide receiver, you'll be glad to have Keenan Allen, and that's in full PPR. And half PPR, non-PPR, I don't think he's quite as valuable. So I'd put him in the exact same ballpark of 10 to 15%, and I'd put Quentin Johnston just a step behind because I'm worried about how consistent he'll be or about whether or not he could break out and render Keenan Allen useless or limit Ladd McConkey from week to week. So I'd say somewhere between like 5 and 8% for Quentin Johnston. I wouldn't be heartbroken if I didn't have Quentin Johnston on my bench. I'd be a little upset if I didn't have Keenan Allen, assuming I didn't already have some good wide receivers on my bench already.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about it. The 31 and 32-year-old wide receivers that we drafted in round 3, 4, they had bad week 1s. Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams. And then here's old man Keenan Allen having this great week 1. But, yeah, he made it work. 10 targets, 7 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. So let's go on down the list here to Cedric Tillman, Rashid Shaheed, and Kayshon Boutte. That's how Jamey has it ranked. Tillman, Shaheed, Boutte. Dave, how do you rank them?
I've got it ranked Tillman, Boutte, Shaheed. And I like them all as depth pieces for fantasy teams. And the deeper leagues, obviously, you'll go and get these guys. Tillman's available in about 70% of leagues. Shaheed about 50% of leagues. Kayshon Boutte, everyone's going to grab him because he's available in 97% of leagues. And I think that there is some long-term potential specifically for Tillman and Boutte. I don't know if Tillman can necessarily be the number 1 target getter in Cleveland, but crazier things have happened. I do think Kayshon Boutte could get there for the Patriots because I think that he is on the same page with Drake May. We saw that in week 1. Their timing was great on a bunch of downfield hitch routes. And he's fast and he's got decent enough hands. He's gotten better as a wide receiver. So I'm kind of intrigued by Kayshon Boutte and the role that he could have. Plus, Stephon Diggs, who was the receiver that we were really targeting in that Patriots offense, didn't play the full allotment of snaps and was really more quicker than fast. Can't break downfield as fast as Boutte did. So it makes me kind of intrigued to go after Kayshon Boutte.
That would be the one concern I do have with Boutte, though, is that Diggs playing more, Douglas getting involved more, Hunter Henry still there. Like with the other guys, their roles are pretty much defined, I think, moving forward. Like Tillman, you say may not be the number 1 guy, but for the last 5 games that he's been healthy, he's been a go-to guy in Kevin Stefanski's offense. And Shaheed, we know what he was last year, out targeting Chris Olave in the first 6 games when those guys were together. They obviously like Boutte, and I think he's going to be around for whatever iteration of this offense we continue to see. But they bring in Diggs. They bring in Kyle Williams, who knows what role he may play at some point.
Sure, that's a fair point.
And I do think that he could potentially, I don't think get phased out, but he could certainly lose opportunities, which is why I think he's definitely worth adding. But I think he's closer to like a Calvin Austin than I do think he's closer to those other guys. Like somebody that's going to have a role in his offense, but will he continue to be the most prominent guy in his offense? It wouldn't shock me if Tillman and Shaheed are those guys.
Tillman, yeah, he is leading the Browns in targets in his last 5 healthy games. And that's with Njoku playing all 5 of them and Jerry Jeudy playing all 5 of them. And yeah, Dave, you may not even be aware of this, but you said the word intrigued twice.
Yeah.
About Kayshon Boutte. So we're up to 10, by the way. Not including this conversation now. We're up to 10 on the intrigue meter. Intriguing. But yeah, this whole group is really interesting. I did put in claims for these guys. I do want that. I mean, 14-team league. I think it's a no-brainer to add Kayshon Boutte and obviously all the other guys we've talked about. But Boutte's the one that's the most widely available. So then let's take a look after that. Then we got. First of all, I never would have thought to roster Calvin Austin. The fact that he's 19% rostered, kudos to the people who rostered Calvin Austin.
I'll tell you what, I've been in a dynasty league where I saw a report, maybe it was like start of training camp, and it was, Austin has a chance to be, I think maybe their slot receiver, whatever the report was, but, play a role for Aaron Rodgers. And I was like, I didn't have anybody to drop. And the one I was toying with, this was, I want to see what happened with the Raiders offense, was Trey Tucker. I was like, do I want to carry Trey Tucker and see what maybe he does, or do I want to pick up Calvin Austin?
You choose wisely?
I kept Tucker. They scored a touchdown. I'm not upset about that. But I'm going to do something. I'm probably going to end up, because I have Harold Fannin, I'm going to drop Dalton Schultz. My tight end situation is bad. Like, just continuing to try to rebuild that spot. I'm going to drop Dalton Schultz for Calvin Austin and just ride Fannin at this point. But I do want to get Calvin Austin. I think, again, you're looking at somebody's got to be the number 2 option there, because it could be Jonnu Smith, who had 6 targets as well. But 1 week's going to be Roman Wilson. 1 week's going to be Calvin Austin. We could see Saronic, who had a touchdown, have an opportunity to make some plays. Pat Freiermuth will have a role. I think it's going to kind of be one of those things that kind of cycles through, like who's the second best pass catcher there. But also keep in mind, they're not going to face every team that has the ability to shut down DK Metcalf like Sauce Gardner did.
Right.
And so Metcalf, like this week, he's going to go nuts against his former team.
He should
go nuclear. I mean, Tariq Woolen will give him a tough time, but he should go nuclear against his former team. And then maybe we're saying, why did we pick up Calvin Austin? Why was he rostered in 19% of leagues?
Yeah.
So could be one of those weeks.
And that's what makes me nervous about Austin. And maybe we should be saying this about Boutte too, because Boutte did what he did against the Raiders and their secondary. I don't think it's that good on paper. But the Jets secondary outside of Sauce Gardner was terrible in that game against the Steelers. And that might be why Rodgers had the big game that he had too, because there were coverage busts all over the place in that game.
Yeah, I want to say all 4 of his touchdowns were basically coverage busts.
Well, I mean, he had a pop pass and a real short throw on top of it. So 2 of them for sure coverage busts.
Yeah, the Skoranek one, the Jalen Warren one, I'd say, and then the last one, I remember what it was.
Warren one was a good play design. The pop pass to Jonnu Smith, that could go against any defense, I guess. Ray
McLeod, if we don't have Mooney and London this week, if we just don't have London this week, I'm assuming he led the NFL in targets in week 1, Drake London. So there's a lot of targets to go around for other Falcons. Jaden Higgins, we kind of were a little late on this, Jamey, but Christian Kirk is also, may not have him this week, but he's 68% rostered or something like that. So what are your thoughts on the Texans guys other than Nico?
I mean, if I could roster one and they're all available, I'm taking Christian Kirk. I think that's a player that C.J. Stroud needs, a player that this offense needs. Look, there's a lot of potential long-term for Higgins and Noel, but in the short term, knowing that this offensive line is a little bit of a disaster, like a guy that can get open quickly and make plays, Kirk is going to be much better at that than the 2 young receivers. So I think they missed him in week 1. I think they're going to miss him for the next couple of weeks, depending on how long he's out. But if he's available on your waiver wire and you don't have to start somebody immediately, yes, he should be a priority, 100%.
And I still think he's their best option as a change up to their run game. I don't think their run game is going to be particularly good anytime soon. So those short throws to the slot receiver could make up for some of that.
Come on back, Christian Kirk. We need you. Wan'Dale Robinson. You could get 10 PPR fantasy points a week from Wan'Dale. Wouldn't surprise us.
Yeah, I wonder if that changes, though, when they change quarterbacks, because Russell Wilson was far more willing to get the ball out of his hands as fast as he could as soon as pressure was felt, whereas Dart might run a little bit more, and he can avoid pressure and go out of the pocket and throw downfield. So I wouldn't get too married to Wan'Dale Robinson.
You're right about that, but Daniel Jones also was the same way when he was with the Giants, and it's just this is who Wan'Dale is. He's going to get 9 to 11 targets on a week-to-week basis, 8 to 10 targets on a week-to-week basis. He's going to catch 6 of them. He's going to get you 40 to 50 yards, 11 PPR points. Just pencil it in every week.
Well, yeah, but they don't throw to their tight end, and they don't throw to their running backs much. So he plays that role. Troy Franklin out-snapped and out-targeted Marvin Mims, just barely out-snapped Marvin Mims, and Alec Iomanner. By the way, people, if you're on Twitter, you've probably seen it, but people are really encouraged by how Cam Ward played. A lot of drops by his receivers. It goes beyond the box score there, and that wasn't a plug for beyond the box score. But Cam Ward played pretty well against the toughest defense in football, so Alec Iomanner might be someone who can help you out. He's 9% rostered. Tight ends, there are a lot of them, and we're going to talk about them. Should you prioritize Harold Fannin or Juwan Johnson or Hunter Henry? We'll tell you after this on Fantasy Football Today. Wonder how the Brock Bowers manager is feeling right now and the Trey McBride manager, because there were 12 tight ends who scored 12 or more PPR fantasy points in week 1. You know how many did that in week 1 last year? 3. In fact, it was not until week 7 that we had 12 tight ends score 12 or more PPR fantasy points in the same week. Now, of course, a lot of these guys weren't started, like Noah Fant and Dalton Kincaid probably, Harold Fannin Jr., Juwan Johnson. But it was a very good week for tight ends. Maybe a sign of things to come? Yeah, probably not with the way tight end works.
I got a new phrase for next year. Late or late.
For how to draft tight ends?
That's right.
I thought you were going to say something like it's the year of the tight end.
No, I said that at the start of the show. Or I forget, maybe it was the podcast. But, like, it could be. I mean, all these guys are going to be so involved. Look at the target share for a lot of these players. Like, it's not like they were just flukes. You know, like Tucker Kraft caught a touchdown, didn't have a lot of targets. Okay, but still was productive.
Yep.
Like, Juwan Johnson, he might be their best receiving option.
Right. Even Kyle Pitts had a good week.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about Fannin and McBride and Kittle had a touchdown before he went down. Bowers.
Jake Tongas?
Kayshon Boutte. Wait, that's not a tight end.
By the way, Tucker Kraft, I think you could look at it and go, oh, man, I don't know about that. And I wouldn't blame you, but I will say Jordan Love only threw 22 passes, and Kraft played more than any other pass catcher. He played most of the snaps. He and Romeo Doubs were the only Packers receivers that played more than half the snaps. So that is a good sign for Tucker Kraft. Hopefully we just need more pass attempts and more competitive games starting this week. Let's hope. All right, anyway, waiver wire priorities at tight end. So you got Harold Fannin. You know what I love about this list? I mean, look at the 2 guys at the top and look at their roster percentages. They're available everywhere. So I imagine this wasn't the easiest list to make in terms of priorities, Jamey. Tell us why you went with this order.
Well, I think Fannin has the most upside moving forward. You know, you look at his college profile, and 2024, 155 catches in college football is hard to overlook, and especially coming right out of the gate, getting all these opportunities on an offense, again, that's going to be very pass heavy. So like the setup for him, whether you consider him the second tight end or the third receiver, he's going to be involved from Joe Flacco. Juwan Johnson, look, last year, 5 of his final 8 games, 12 or more PPR points, now comes into this year with Spencer Rattler with a new play caller after getting a 3-year contract extension. No Taysom Hill, no Foster Moreau. Got to like the involvement that he has there. After those 2 guys, I think you can make some semblance of whatever order you want. Now, I did put likely third because Andrews non-existent. Lamar Jackson, once again, looks great. And we heard all offseason before the foot injury, Pro Bowl season coming for Isaiah Likely, breakout season coming for Isaiah Likely. Well, maybe it does come to fruition if you have the ability to stash him. But I think for somebody like Hunter Henry or Brenton Strange, both have great matchups this week. You know, Strange takes on the Bengals. We just saw what happened to the Browns tight ends, the combination of Fannin and David Njoku. Henry takes on a Dolphins team, that Tyler Warren just beat up, and Henry's coming off a strong game. So both those guys can be, plug-and-play starters if you're looking to replace Hunter Henry, for example. So it's a matter of what you think long-term versus short-term. But there's a lot of options at this position. So I think the fun part about it is from a fab perspective or even a waiver perspective, you may not have to prioritize those guys if you're just looking for speculation or, again, the 1-week scenario, because we may see a lot of this turn next week. You mentioned 3 guys last year. Well, one prominently was Isaiah Likely, who had the huge 2-touchdown game in week 1 and then disappeared for several weeks after the fact. So a lot of these guys may be disappointing, may be disappearing acts after week 1 strong performances. But I do think that there's a lot to like about a lot of these situations, again, for even the guys like Hunter Henry and Brenton Strange.
How do you see it, Dave?
I see it similarly, and I love the fact that you can get 2 tight ends at the top of the waiver wire list and that they shouldn't cost you a lot in FAB. I'm in a league where FAB is already run already, and Harold Fannin went for 12% of the budget. So I think you could expect that to be the going rate for him, and you might be able to get Juwan Johnson for half that price. And if that's the comparative shopping that you want to do, I might rather have Johnson, because I could see him having good target volume week in and week out, Saints trailing a lot, finished last year strong. You've been talking about that for Juwan Johnson for the last several hours. And I think that Juwan Johnson could end up being number 2, number 3 in terms of targets from game to game in New Orleans. And I just think that there's a lot of potential with him as a short area target who can make a big play after the catch. Kind of like Fannin, but not in as big of a crowded backfield, or receiving core rather, and not with a backfield that's going to get better. New Orleans' backfield is what it is. Cleveland, once Quinshad Judkins gets there will be some games where they run a lot more than throw.
Yeah, the problem with Fannin is we always say you want to find a tight end who could be second on his team in targets. He's probably going to be second on the team at the tight end position in targets.
No, he wasn't in the first game, though.
Right. The fact that the first game went like it did makes me a little bit unsure of that.
Maybe, but still, he still has Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy and Dylan Sampson to contend with you.
Right. That's to be second on the team overall in targets, but second on the team among tight ends in targets.
Oh, but I was just making the
David
point.
Njoku.
This could be bad for Njoku, absolutely, but it's tough on paper to buy into a guy that could be anywhere from 1st to 5th, or 4th maybe on his team in targets. But like I said earlier in the show, last decade, rookies making their debut, he has the 2nd highest target per route run rate of any tight end who ran 20 or more routes. Number 1 was Tyler Warren, at almost 40%, I think.
Right.
What did you make of the note I brought up about Austin Hooper barely being involved in the passing game and what that could mean for Hunter Henry?
So I think that was game dependent, or will be game dependent. I spoke earlier about the Raiders defense. Where's their weak point? It's not in the pass rush. It's not at linebacker. It's in the secondary. And so the Patriots decided to attack with 3 wide receivers. When they take on teams that maybe have good outside corners but are weak in the middle, that might be when you'll see a little bit more of Austin Hooper. But I do think Hunter Henry will be number 1 among Patriots tight ends in terms of targets from week to week. And you got to love the matchup against the Dolphins this week. I love it for everybody in the Patriots passing game. And that's why I think Hooper, if you're absolutely desperate, you go to him. No one's really adding him. Hunter Henry is definitely 2-3 notches above that, a guy who's worthy of being a tight end streamer in week number 2.
I think, again, though, you're looking for trends, right? So Johnson, 5 of his last 8 games, 12 or more PPR points. Henry, 4 of his last 6 games going back to last season, 10.6 PPR points or more. So these guys coming off strong finishes. Now, in the case of both of them, new coordinator, new coach, whatever the case may be, you're seeing some changes. But clearly these guys are veteran players that their young quarterbacks can rely on. And I think just, again, if there's something that you're going to learn from it is what happened at the end of last year, can it carry over? And maybe the new coaching staff and Josh McDaniels, and the same thing with Kellen Moore in New Orleans. Like, they like these veteran guys that are going to make plays. And the quarterbacks, mostly Drake May, I'm sure said, hey, give me this guy on the field a little bit more and I can make plays with him.
You said something that made me think for a second. Young quarterback with a veteran tight end. We saw it last year with Zach Ertz and Jaden Daniels. Are we seeing it now with Drake May and Hunter Henry? Maybe.
We saw it
last year. I mean, again.
Right, toward the end of the year. Right. It makes perfect sense.
No, not just that. The 10 healthy games that Drake May played, Hunter Henry averaged 10.2 PPR fantasy points per game. It's not going to win you your league, but it's pretty good.
If you're streaming, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I brought that up last week, and Jamey made the point, and astutely, they didn't have Stephon Diggs last year. So they didn't. Kayshon Boutte was doing this, and but he still could be a factor. And again, I think the play is, unless you strongly believe in Harold Fannin, I don't think you spend a lot of money or make this a big priority, as you guys were saying, because there are so many guys, and this is going to be, I think this might be like this on a weekly basis. Hunter Henry's probably going to cycle in and out of lineups. It happens every year with Hunter Henry.
Yes.
So, like, let's say Marquise Brown and these other guys are out there that could actually have staying power. Your tight end, and again, unless it's Fannin, unless you really believe strongly in that, Your tight end should not be your number one waiver wire priority. There are too many of them.
The Kittle manager is the one right now. Like,
Right.
of all the injuries, Worthy is up there too. But the Kittle manager is, a guy you spent a third or fourth round pick on, and trying to find somebody that can give you those numbers that you were expecting. That's hard.
You can't get. But still, again, when you have 5-6 guys on the waiver wire that might project for the same amount of points.
No,
this
I'm not
week,
disagreeing. What I'm saying is the mind of the Kittle manager is going to say, I'm going to try and get tight end first.
I think it's wrong. Again, unless you have strong conviction about one of them, I think that they're too similar. It's like when there are 4 DSTs you want, you don't make one of them, number one priority. You just make them your last one.
The upside that Fannin and Juwan have compared to Hunter Henry make me want to gravitate toward them first, just not necessarily with a crazy amount of fab. Like I said, 12-15% max on somebody like Fannin, half that for Juwan Johnson. Hunter Henry, you might be able to get for nothing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And if not, there's Brenton Strange we haven't talked about. We have to take a break, but Brenton Strange.
I like him. I like him better than Henry.
And he faces Cincinnati, and they couldn't cover 2 tight ends last week. So Brenton Strange is another option if you need someone. All right, we're going to answer your questions, your ad drop questions, when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. Okay, we're back one final time to learn who the Chiefs signed at wide receiver, but also to answer your questions. Pick up Justin Fields or Trey Benson. I need a running back, but Nix is my quarterback.
I think you answered your question.
What, you're dropping Nix for Fields?
No, I'm just picking up Benson and sticking with Nix.
Oh, man, I can't leave Fields unrostered. But, all right, so you're picking up Benson. Dave?
You might be creating work for yourself by picking up Fields now and then trying to make a deal with somebody else on your team to get a running back. If you don't feel like doing that kind of work, then I guess Benson's the pickup, but I don't love it. Go with pickup Fields.
All right, next question. Great question. Would you drop Njoku for any of the streaming tight ends?
So that's Fannin, that's Juwan Johnson, that's Brenton Strange, and Hunter Henry.
No, I'm keeping Njoku.
I think I agree. At least one more week.
Keep him. Next. Would you drop Loveland for Fannin?
In anything but a dynasty league, and even then you might be questioning it. But yes, I would rather have Fannin than Loveland in a redraft league right now.
We're going to come back to picking up Loveland, though. He'll get dropped in a bunch of leagues over the next 24 hours. At some point this year, he will matter.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, that's kind of a fantasy reality you have to accept. You have to win now sometimes. Would you keep Purdy or drop him and play the waiver wire weekly? May is on waivers.
So just even going back to the Justin Fields question, if Fields was not drafted and on waivers and May was not drafted and on waivers, then you're going to find probably a lot of great quarterbacks still available on waivers. So I would drop Purdy and pick up May for this week because Purdy's banged up, no Kittle. May gets the Dolphins. It's a great matchup. I would start May over Purdy if I had both. So yes, I would do that if that's the quarterback's available.
I would not drop Bo Nix for Justin Fields, would you?
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like I'd go pick up Benson, play Nix, and Fields if he's still on waivers. There's probably other quarterbacks that are still going to be good on waivers too. Not as good as Fields, but still other quarterbacks are.
Last one, real quick, guys. What's the best tight end waiver wire option for Andrews, and why is it Ertz?
It's not Ertz. I like Fannin and Juwan Johnson better because I think they're more explosive and we'll see more targets.
Agreed.
That is it. Oh, who'd they sign?
Hal Presley to their practice squad.
Hal Presley?
Hal Presley. You owe me $100, Adam. Thank you.
$15 fab on him. We're back Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody. For Dave and Jamey, I'm Adam. See you next time.